Gittin Daf Mem Hey contains 3 Mishnayos. So we'll first learn the first part of the daf up until the first Mishnah. We start about 10 lines into the daf. The Gemara brings the story about an Eved that fled Chutz La'aretz and ran to Eretz Yisrael. As we know, we don't send Avadim to Chutz La'aretz. So if he came here, he's going to be protected here to some extent. And the Gemara discusses what happened, and we'll have 4 pshatim and a pasuk as part of the incident. So let's bring the story. The Gemara says that there was an Eved who ran away from his master. This is an Eved Kanani who ran away from his master in Chutz La'aretz outside Eretz Yisrael. And he ran to Eretz Yisrael. And the master chased after him into Eretz Yisrael to try to grab him back. And he came before Rav Ami. And Rav Ami said, here's what you're going to do. You're going to write him a get shechar. You're going to set him free. And we're going to give you a contract that he has to pay you his value. Now, he could have stayed with him in Eretz Yisrael, but he could not have taken him back to Chutz La'aretz. So he didn't have to set him free. But if he wanted to keep him, he had to stay in Eretz Yisrael. And he didn't want to stay in Eretz Yisrael, and he wouldn't be worth much to sell, because everybody knows that he can't keep him in a Chutz La'aretz. So therefore, he said, just set him free, and he's going to pay you his value. Now, said Rav Ami, if you're not going to do this, if you're not going to set him free, I'm going to take him away from you, and you're going to lose him altogether, based on a limud that said by Achi, the son of Rabbi Yeshaya. So now the Gemara brings the brisa with this limud of Achi, the son of Rabbi Yeshaya, and it's 4 ways to learn a pasuk like Sazger Eved El Adoinav Asher Yinas Le'elecha Me'im Adoinav. And after that it says Im Chayeshev B'ker B'cha. So the Gemara has 4 ways of explaining this. So the words are, you should not lock, meaning you should not force an Eved to stay with his master, that which shall flee or shall be saved from the master to you. Instead, he should live with you, within you. So what does this mean? You shouldn't force an Eved to go back to his master. You shouldn't force an Eved to his master. How do you explain this pasuk? So the first pshat the Gemara brings is that this is saying that someone from the Shiva Umos, the 7 nations that were in Canaan before us, is allowed to stay there as long as they assume that as long as they accept upon themselves that they're not going to serve Avodah Zarah anymore. Even though it says, they should not live in your land lest they cause you to sin to me, Hashem says. So that would seem to say that they can't stay. However, they can stay. We're not going to send them away as long as they're makabel not to serve Avodah Zarah. That's why it says, don't force the servant to go to its master, meaning to the foreign Avodah Zarah that they serve. Say that he saved from his master, that he vows not to serve Avodah Zarah. Instead, he should stay with you. He can live with you. That's Gemara's first pshat. Now the Gemara says Rabbi Shai rejected this because it shouldn't say Mimad Doinov. If it's referring to its Avodah Zarah, it should say Mimali Kov, or according to some Girsos, it should say Mim Aviv from his father. Mimad Doinov is not the proper term for his master. So therefore Rabbi Shai says it's different. We're talking about somebody who sells his Eved to Chutz La'aretz, and it says you should not force him to go to his master in Chutz La'aretz. Let him stay with you in Eretz Yisrael. You should cancel that sale. As a hint to the rule that we have that somebody who sells his Eved to Chutz La'aretz goes free. So the Gemara says that Rabbi Shaya's son, who was Achi bar Rabbi Shaya, he asked the kasha that then it shouldn't say Asher Yinasel Eilecha, that is saved to you. It's not saved to you. It's being saved away from you. He's being sent away from his master, away from here, away from Eretz Yisrael, into Chutz La'aretz. That's the wrong phrase. So therefore Rabbi Shaya says his home pshat. He says it's talking about exactly our case. It's talking about an Eved who flees away from his master in Chutz La'aretz and comes to live in Eretz Yisrael. We don't return him to his master, that he gets saved from the master to you, to us here in Eretz Yisrael. Instead, Im Chayeshev, he can live here with you. So therefore, if Ami was saying to this master who wanted to get back his Eved, you're not going to get back your Eved, I can do for you like Rabbi Shaya, I can say that this pasuk is telling us to take him away from you. Now, the Gemara writes that there is a 4th pshat, and this is another brisa. The brisa brings Rebbe, who says it's talking about somebody who purchases an Eved on condition to free him. And it's saying that he has to free him, he cannot work him. What's the case? Menachem Yitzchak says, he writes him in a shtar. He says, when I purchase you, I am going to free you. And we're assuming, according to the pshat, that someone is allowed to be machne davar shalei b'lo, so therefore he could give the Eved his freedom, even though he doesn't own him yet. And that will take effect from the time that he purchases him and he owns him. And now the Gemara brings a series of incidents. The Gemara quotes Rav Chisda had an Eved who ran away, and he ran to a place called Beikusoi, which sounds like it was a village of Kusim. Now, both Rav Chisda's town and Beikusoi were outside of Israel. This is all Chutz La'aretz. And so he sent a message that my Eved is by you guys there in Beikusoi, send him back to me, please. So they said, no, the Torah says, Eved El Adan, if you don't return a master who ran away. So he sent to them, no, but the Torah also says that you should return someone's lost object. It says, give back his chamor, his simla, and chol avedas achicha, give back the donkey, the clothing, and anything he's going to lose. So give me back my eved. So they said, no, it says l'sas eved al if you don't return a lost one. So he said that's talking about something else. You're not learning right pshat. That's not saying you don't return an eved that's lost from his master. And he told him the pshat of Rav Achi Bar Yishaya that it's talking about if he fled from Chutzars to Eretz Yisrael, but here he fled to within Chutzars, didn't go to Eretz Yisrael. So Gemara asks, why did he say that pshat? Why didn't he say Rabbi's pshat, which is not related, just talking about somebody who bought an eved on a condition to free him, but it still shows that they're learning wrong pshat in the pasuk. So the Gemara says because he didn't agree with that pshat, he didn't think that was the right way to learn the pasuk. Okay, next incident is Abaye. He also lost something to Bei Kisai. He lost a donkey there. He sent a message, give me back my donkey. And they said, give us a siman, give us a sign that it's yours. So he said, its stomach is white. So they sent back to him, that's not a siman. We're going to return it to you anyway because you're Nachmani, because you're a Talmud Chacham, and we know you. However, if you would not have been a Talmud Chacham, you would not have been a Nachmani, we would not believe you based on that, because every donkey has a white stomach, doesn't prove anything. We now begin our first Mishnah for the Daf, which discusses a new Tikkun Olam, no longer in the Sugya of Avadim, a new way of doing something for the betterment of society, for the entire world. We'll have two Tikkunis, and the Gemara will bring a brief discussion, and a story. So the Mishnah says that we don't redeem captives for more than their value. The Gemara elsewhere, not in our Sugya, will discuss how you make that evaluation. We don't pay too much ransom. And what's the reason? Mipnei Tikkun Olam. Doesn't say what exactly. Now, the second halacha is that you don't help captives escape. Now, here, there's two ways of understanding. The Tanakama says, Mipnei Tikkun Olam, to fix the world. Of Shimon ben Gamliel says, we're not worried about the world, we're worried about the other captives that are left behind. Apparently, if you help the first one escape, then the other ones are going to suffer because of it. So, the Gemara begins, the Gemara says, what do we mean, Mipnei Tikkun Olam? How are we fixing the world by refusing to pay a high ransom? The Gemara has two possible explanations. One is that you're going to pressure the congregation, you're going to pressure the public to lay down a lot of money. You can't do that. The second shot is because even if we can afford it this time, this will just encourage the kidnappers to do things like this again, and we don't want that to happen. We would rather they realize that this is not worth it. So the Gemara brings a proof to which side. The Gemara says, was an incident that happened with Levi bar Zarga, whose daughter was captured, and he redeemed her for 13,000 golden dinarim, an exorbitant amount of money, but it was his own money. He was able to afford it on his own, so he did it on his own. So you see, the problem is not that we don't want the captors to learn to do it again, because they're most definitely going to learn from this to do it again. The problem was that we don't want to force the congregation to chip in, and he, in this case, was able to pay for it himself, so that's not an issue. Someone says it's not a proof, because it could be that he was a bit of a maverick when he did this, and the Chachamim did not agree. Abaye says, who says that the Chachamim agreed to this? Maybe he did it on his own. And really, the Chachamim would have said, don't do it, because it's going to cause the captors to go kidnap other people, because they see it's a profitable business. Okay, next, the second part of the Mishnah said that we don't help prisoners, we don't help captives, those people who are innocently kidnapped, we don't help them escape. Tanakama said to fix the world. Rishon ben Gamliel said to help the other captors. What's the difference between them? Versus difference is if there are no other captors, if he's the only one. Rishon ben Gamliel would say you can help him escape, while the Tanakama would say no, possibly because it'll cause them to go get angry and grab other people instead. Now the Gemara brings the incident. The Gemara says that the daughters of Rav Nachman used to stir a hot pot with their hands. They didn't use a spoon. And Rav Ilish understood that the reason was because they were very holy. They were so righteous that it did not burn them, it didn't affect them. So Rav Ilish thought this was strange because there's a pasuk that says, Adam echad me'elef matzasi. I found 1 person out of 1,000 who's a tzaddik. I didn't find even that many women. So how could this happen? But you have the daughters of Rav Nachman, and much more than 1 in 1,000. And even 1 in 1,000 you shouldn't find. So the Gemara says because of this, it happened that they were captured, they were taken prisoner, that is Rav Nachman's daughters, plus this Rav Ilish. And the Gemara is going to explain how that's a result of this. So Gemara says, as they were in captivity, so Rav Ilish was locked up in a room, obviously with only men, and there was another person there with him who understood the language of the birds. So a raven came and he was chirping loudly, as if he seemed to be trying to say something. So Rav Ilish asked this fellow, what's he saying? So he said, it's saying Ilish brach, Ilish brach. It's saying Ilish run away, Ilish run away, meaning now is a good time for you to escape. So Rav Ilish said, we know that ravens lie. We saw that by the Mabul, so I'm not going to trust them. I'm staying right here. And then along came a Yena, along came a dove, and he was also squawking away. So Rav Elish asked, what's he saying? And the man said, he's saying, Elish run away, Elish run away. So he said, Klal Yisrael is compared to a Yena. I believe him, and it must be that a miracle is going to happen to me if I try to escape now. And he said, the only question is, should I go take Rav Nachman's daughters with me and we'll escape together? So he said, the problem is, I don't know if they're still keeping the faith. So let me go find out. So he said, the best way to find out is to hear what they're saying in the bathroom. That's where women discuss things that are important to them. So he went and hid behind the bathroom to hear what they had to say. And he heard them saying, our current captors are our husbands and our old husbands from Na'adol. We don't need any more. Let's go ask the captors to take us away far so that those Nahardian men shouldn't find us. So obviously they were very happily married to their captors, and they had not kept the faith, and therefore he said, I'm going to escape without them. And he went and he ran away together with the guy who understood the language of the birds. Anyway, and they were fleeing. A miracle happened to Elish, and he was able to cross the river. The other guy did not manage to get across the river. He was caught, and he was killed. And anyway, the daughters of Rav Nachman came back at some point, and he found out that the reason that they were stirring the pot with their bare hands was because of witchcraft, not because of righteousness. And that's the reason that they were all caught, so that this could happen and he can understand that they were not really righteous at all. And now we get the second Mishnah, which discusses ransoming Sefer Torah, Tefillin, and Mezuzos from Avdei Kechavim, and the Gemara will get into those halachas briefly, and then get into more generally the halachas of Sfarim that are written by Avdei Kechavim, Minim, Apikarsim, and Avdei Zara, and people like that. So the Mishnah says we don't buy a Sefer Torah, Tefillin, or Mezuzah from a Avdei Kechavim for more than its value. And again, we take an item to help society. Okay, so now we have a discussion as to what is the halacha of Sefer Torah that's written by a guy or found in possession of a guy. So Gemara says that Rav Budya said to Rav Ashi, based on this Mishnah, it says you should not redeem his svarim for more than the value, but for the appropriate value you should redeem them. Obviously you could use them, and you see that a Sefer Torah which is found in the possession of an Eved Kechavim, you're allowed to lane from it, you're allowed to use it. So Gemara says, no, maybe not. Maybe your reason you're redeeming it is so it shouldn't be in a bezayin in the possession of the Eved Kechavim, and you don't intend to use it, you intend to put it into Geniza, you intend to bury it. So now let's get into these halachas more specifically. The Gemara says, Rav Nachman says, they have two types of shilas here, a Sefer Torah, Tefillin, Mezuzah, which was written by a person we don't trust, or which was found in the possession of a person we don't trust. Written is obviously worse because we know he wrote it. Found in his possession is always a possibility that he didn't write it. It was written by a regular Yisrael. The question is, what are these halachas? So we'll talk about an Eved Kechavim, that is a person who is Eved Vaytazara, of course. We'll talk about a Min, that is a Jew who is an Apikaris, who rejects the essential faith. So Gemara says, Rav Nachman says, the Sefer Torah, which was written by a Min, that's worse than Eved Kechavim, that has to be burned, because we know he wrote it for his Avodah Zarah. When he wrote Shem Hashem, he didn't mean Hashem, he meant his Avodah Zarah. If it's written by an Eved Kechavim, which we don't mean an idol worshiper, we just mean a guy, then it should be put into Geniza. We don't know what he had in mind when he wrote it. Now, if it was just found in the possession, so it was found in the possession of a min, put in the Geniza, we don't know if he wrote it or not, so we don't know if it was written for Avodah Zarah or not. If it was found in the possession of a Kechavim, now you have a Sfeika. Could be, we don't know if he wrote it. Even if he wrote it, we don't know what he had in mind. So some say you put into Geniza, and some say you could actually use it to lane from it as a Sefer Torah. Now, the Gemara says there are brises on the Shabbat. Sefer Torah, which was written by an Eved Kechavim. So there's one brisa that says it's burned. There's another brisa that says it goes into Geniza. And there's a third brisa that says you can actually use it. You can actually lane from it. All these three possibilities are said by brises, all contradicting each other. So how do we understand this? So Gemara says, not a kasha, there's three different opinions. The one that says it should be burned is Rabbi Elazar holds that an Eved Kechavim is always thinking about Avodah Zarah, and therefore he wrote it for Avodah Zarah. And the one that says it should be put into Shemis, it should be put into Geniza. So that is the opinion of Rav Hamnuna Brei Derava Mipashrunya, who says the Sefer Torah, Tefillin, and Mezuzah that was written by someone we don't trust. So min is a question if you have this kirush or not, but we have a moiser, someone who informs on people to captors, to the government, or by an Eved Kechavim, or by an Eved, by Isha, by a child, by a Kusi, or Yisrael who rejects the faith, Yisrael Mumar. All these tefillin and mezuzahs are puzzle. You can't use them, and it's exeres the The Torah says, ukshart them, you should tie the tefillin onto you, and it says, uksaf them right afterwards, and you should write them. Connection between the two, the only people that could write them are the people that are in the mitzvah that have the commandment to tie them. That excludes all these individuals who either don't have the commandment or don't do the commandment to tie them on them. So that's that opinion that says that they are puzzle, but it doesn't say it has to be burnt. And the third brisa that says you could actually use it, you could lane from it, or if it would be a sefer Torah, you could lane from it, and the other ones you could use. That is this Tana, which you see in a brisa, you can buy svarim from Avdi Kachavim in any place they are, as long as they're written halachically correctly. You have to check them, inspect them, and you can use them even if they're written by a guy. This Tana seems to hold a guy who writes the Sefer Torah is kosher. And he says there's a story about an Avdi Kachavim who lived in Sidon who would write svarim all the time. And Shimon ben Gamliel said people can buy from him. They can use it. They can buy from him. It's fine. Now, so Gemara asks, what about Lishma? Don't you have to write L'Shem Shemayim? It has to be written for the right reasons. And Shimon ben Gamliel holds that tefillin have to be made Lishma. So the writing should certainly have to be Lishma. So this guy, how could he write Lishma? The guy doesn't have Lishma. So the Gemara says, let's bring the brisa. The brisa says that if you plated a set of tefillin with gold or skin of a non-kosher animal, so everybody agrees that they are puzzle. If it's made from skin of a kosher animal, but it's not lishma, so that's machlokes. Tanakama says it's kosher. Rosh Gamliel says puzzle, has to be written lishma. Okay, so now we're left with the kasha. How could he allow the Sefer Torah to be written by a guy if he doesn't have lishma? So the Gemara answers that we're not talking about a guy mamish, we're talking about a guy who converted, so he's a ger, and he went back to living like a guy. Somewhere says he went back to living like a guy. That's a min. That's what we call a min. That's a heretic. So how could you, he's very desire and everything. How could you say that we allow it? We said it has to be burnt. So Rav Ashi says, no, he didn't intentionally, willingly go back to behaving like a guy. He was forced. He was under penalty. He was afraid for his safety, and that's why he had to. But we have no reason to assume that he had in mind when he wrote tefillin l'shem avodah zarah or l'shem whatever other thing there is out there, according to the demyonis of the avodah zarah. He certainly internally in his thoughts is loyal. The Gemara brings a brisa. The Gemara says you are allowed to upsell these things a little bit. You're allowed to pay a little bit more than their value. Only a trepik more. How much is a trepik? It says Rav Sheshes in Istera, which the Gemara says elsewhere is a half selah. Now the Gemara says there was a Arab woman who brought a pair of tefillin to Abaye, or two pairs to Abaye, and she wanted it to be ransomed. And Abaye said, I'll give you a cluster of dates for each one. And she got angry. She took it and threw it into the river, and obviously they were ruined. So Abaye said, I should not have been so belittling of their value and caused her to do that. Right now we get to our last Mishnah for the Daf, and this is going to conclude the Daf. We'll end with the Mishnah. So the Mishnah says about the halachos of somebody divorcing his wife. When can he take her back, and when do we make a rule that he's not allowed to take her back? And this will possibly be because of tikkun olam as well. So the Mishnah says if somebody divorces his wife because she had a negative rumors about her, she had a bad reputation, he cannot remarry her. And the Gemara will discuss why. And if he divorced her because she made a neder, she started making vows, he didn't want her to make vows, so that is a bit of a machlekes. Tanakama says he can't take her back in that situation either. Rabbi Huda says if it's a public neder, he can't take her back. If it's a private neder that people don't know about, he could take her back. Rabbi Meir says it depends if it's a neder that he could be mefer, the husband could cancel, or if it's something he can't cancel. There's rules to what he could cancel. It can only be something which causes pain and suffering or is relevant to him. But if it's not one of those, she has to go to a chacham. Then if he divorces her for that reason, then he can't take her back afterwards. It says Rav Elazar, they did aser and they made gzeira one because of the other. Now the Gemara quotes Rav Yosef. Rav Yehuda says an incident that happened in Sidon by somebody who said to his wife, "I take a vow that if I don't divorce you, I'm going to be usher on me a whole bunch of things. And he went and he divorced her, and then the Chachamim permitted him to take her back, mipnei tikkun olam, because to fix the world. Now, what's the pshat of here? So the Gemara is going to get into it, but we'll just discuss briefly. There's two possible concerns. One is that he may mess her up, that she'll go and get married, and then he'll say, oh, this was based on a false assumption. I thought I couldn't be matir the neder, or I thought it was a rumor, and it turns out that it wasn't true. So therefore we say you have to know that you're not going to be able to take her back, and then you can't claim anything. You have to make your decisions wisely in advance. So the question here is, what is the issue at hand? So according to the Tanakama, the issue is that we're afraid that he's going to try to mess her up, and therefore we don't allow him to take her back under any circumstances. Rabbi Huda says that there's a different shot, and that is, we don't want women to be making nidarim. We want it to be clear that they shouldn't be hefker in this manner, and therefore Rabbi Huda says if it's a public neder, so then that becomes hefker, and therefore we don't allow it, and we won't allow him to take her back. If it was a private thing, so that's not a concern. You don't need to worry about that. Now, Rabbi Meir goes back to the first reason. He says, no, the problem is that he's going to claim he didn't know that it could be canceled. Well, if it's something that could be made fair, he can't say that. He has his own halachas of hafara. He can do that. It's not up to a chacham at all. You can't say, oh, I didn't know. If, however, it's something that's up to the chacham, he can say, I didn't know she was going to be able to get a heter for that neder, and therefore he can't take her back in that situation lest he mess her up afterwards. Now, Rav Elazar says the opposite. He says he certainly would not want to have his wife go schlep to a chacham to get a heter, and therefore he can't say, oh, I didn't realize she could get a heter. We assume he didn't want that. And therefore, if it was a type of neder that he require a chacham, there's no concern he's going to mess her up. However, we answered it because of the case of Bat Hafara, where he could have said that I didn't know that I could be a mefer, so we answered that. And as Gzeira will also answer in the case where he can't be mefer and she has to go to a chacham. Our last part of Rabbi Yehuda about the story in Sidain, the Gemara will explain that as we go.